Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's discussion. As Ian mentioned, I'm Kim Turner, and I'm delighted to be hosting Maggie, my colleague, for today's discussion as we continue our series exploring the intersection between innovation and employee experience. Today, Maggie will be discussing important drivers of employee engagement, as well as sharing proven practices from our experience in crowdsourced innovation that you can employ to increase engagement across your organization. Before we dive in, I'd like to share a little bit about us to provide some context. Spigit enables organizations to engage employees in ideation, to create and manage a pipeline of ideas. These ideas translate into initiatives that can drive new business strategies, new product development, even operational efficiencies. And Spigit enables business leaders to find the best ideas and foster a culture of innovation. As the largest provider of idea management solutions, we have the privilege of serving some of the world's foremost and recognizable organizations. As such, we've launched more than 14,000 ideation challenges and campaigns across many industries and geographies. This translates into a level of expertise that is highly valued by our customers. Our innovation strategists work hand in glove with our clients to ensure their program success and bring to bear experiences across companies and industries. I'm delighted to introduce Maggie so that she can share her insights today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Maggie.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I think we're actually going to be advancing one more. There we go. Thank you. So I'm going to start today where we left off in the first webinar of the series that I think was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago now, which you can easily access the recording. So what we were presenting to folks was that according to the conference board, as well as some of our own research and experience with our clients, we're seeing that these are the two hot button issues in the market today. And you can see that there's an important intersection happening here between innovation and employee engagement. So let's look at the strategies that companies are deploying to grapple with these two issues. So as you can see here, there's 3 top strategies: culture of innovation, promoting idea sharing in teams, and raising employee engagement. So we know from our experience working with clients, as well as research that we've conducted, that there are simple ways to move the dial on all 3 of these strategies and make progress on the 2 hot issues. And that's what we're going to share with you here today. So here's some stats from Gallup that show that the disengagement epidemic is vast and costly. So you can see that North America actually enjoys some of the lower disengagement percent, which in this case is positive, but it is an epidemic across the world. And some of the details cited for this epidemic include turnover rates, lost productivity, poor customer experience, absenteeism, and lower profitability. And overall, there's a cost to businesses of $7 trillion in the marketplace. So the important thing to note is that these employees are not necessarily poor performers, but they are indifferent to your organization. They give you their time, but not their best effort or their best ideas. They're coming to work wanting to make a difference, but nobody asks them to use their strengths to make the organization better. And that is the crux of the epidemic. And what we've seen is that actually it's an epidemic and a crisis in the U.S. That's stagnant, right? That no one has been able to move the dial very much. And what a lot of our experts are saying in the marketplace is that this is due to traditional methods like annual reviews, employee surveys, are no longer breaking through. And folks are just getting used to these as rote tasks. And here are just a couple of quotes to reinforce that point. At the end of the day, engagement is a big ship that won't move quickly if all we do is measure it. So, according to this research by Jacob Morgan, who's the author of The Employee Experience Advantage, it shows us that some organizations are, in fact, enjoying some of these benefits and these competitive advantages. We're going to take a look at 5 key drivers of employee engagement and how best practices can start to move the ship for your organization and get you closer to some of these competitive advantages that are listed here. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to ground everyone in what we call crowdsourcing campaigns. This is an overarching best practice that we will be referencing throughout the rest of this webinar, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone has a basic understanding of what we're talking about. It is an online campaign where a business leader can articulate a problem, gather ideas that would start solving the problem, and select the best ideas that they want to act on. So in essence, you get to choose who participates. You can moderate and proactively help your crowd understand what you're looking for. And then you can also involve experts to help drive the results you're looking for and select the best ideas. At the end of the day, it's an efficient way to identify the best ideas to act on. Okay, so let's start with our first driver of employee engagement, which is understanding the company direction and strategy. So first, let me give you some characteristics and describe what this means based on the research and what most HR executives would reference this as. It consists of a clear understanding of the company strategy and how an employee's job and other contributions fit into that strategy. It's also understanding the rationale behind the variety of company activities and, again, how they link together and generate value for the company. And then lastly, it's an interest in being able to influence the company direction and ultimate success. So now we have some best practices that we can share to help understand and bring to fruition this driver in your company. So first of all, you can engage employees in the campaigns that we shared earlier by listing out specific priority initiatives that you've either communicated at a quarterly communication meeting or that are literally lifted from your corporate strategy. Secondly, by having your executive sponsor the initiatives, it's usually a big endorsement and a huge motivator for all of your employees to participate. And then thirdly, if you can define the success measures in terms of both business value and employee engagement, you have a higher likelihood of realizing those success measures and motivating others to participate. And then last but not least is the communication plan. And this is your opportunity to link all the activities that are going on back into the campaign and your corporate strategy and explain how they're all linked together. So for example, this is not meant to be a once and done campaign. We have several clients that will run 17 campaigns a year, and through the communication plan, they explain, okay, how all 17 are linked together and how they ladder back up to the corporate strategy. And keep in mind that employee engagement itself could be a strategic priority and a topic for one of these campaigns. So let's look at the example that we have on the screen right now, which is a Fortune 500 company that was introducing a whole new company direction and positioning campaign that they were going to launch in the market, and they wanted to launch it internally at the same time to create a culture of innovation that empowers employees to contribute in new and different ways. So essentially, they announced this campaign that they wanted to be the leading health and well-being food company through a crowdsourcing campaign and asked their employees to help generate new ideas that would generate revenue under this kind of a positioning. At the end, it resulted in a Shark Tank, which identified 2 new revenue opportunities, and they got such a high level of participation and positive feedback that they have already run several campaigns to follow right after. Okay, so let's look at our next driver of employee engagement, which is making progress on meaningful work. So again, I'll give you a description. This means solving relevant problems and seeing impact or progress from the employee's efforts. It also means linking work to the broader meaning of life and making a positive contribution to the greater good. And then lastly, it means giving people the tools and autonomy to succeed while contributing to meaningful work. So let's look at the best practices that we have to deploy this as a driver. So the first one is to communicate the rationale. So when you launch a crowdsourcing campaign, there's all types of opportunities to help employees understand why this is important, what the outcomes will drive, and how you came to decide on this as your first topic or any topic. So communicating the rationale is a best practice. Secondly, the commitment to act. So you don't want to just run the campaign for the sake of running the campaign or generate ideas for the sake of having a huge repository of ideas. The whole point would be to commit to act on the ideas. And please note that I am purposely using the words commit to act versus implement the idea. The difference being that your commitment is that you will take the ideas to the next level. You'll research them, you'll probe them, you'll verify them and validate them. And then, if it makes business sense, you can implement them. But your commitment to the employees is to at least take an action. The third best practice is to communicate progress updates. So, as you're committing to act and taking steps, it's so important to be transparent and visible about the updates and the learnings that you're making. In fact, we have several clients that use the Spigit platform to accomplish that exact best practice. And then the last best practice is a common vision. This is a very specific link back to HR and shows how you can leverage this traditional approach of performance goals and connect them back to a crowdsourcing campaign. And so this is one way where you can augment a traditional approach with this new tactic of crowdsourcing campaigns, and it changes the dynamics and hopefully moves the ship around employee engagement. A couple of other greater good themes that we've seen in our clients would be things around safety measures. So they run campaigns on how to improve safety, not only for themselves, but customers and other suppliers that engage with them. Or we've seen sustainability topic campaigns for how to give back to the earth or be more reasonable in our usage of resources from the earth. So let's look at an example of a client that launched a crowdsourcing campaign around making progress on meaningful work. So here we have a global nutrition company, and our sponsor in this case was the Chief Innovation Officer. And they knew that there was an issue and several escalating issues in their North American call centers. So they ran a time-bound crowdsourcing campaign to solve the operational efficiency and communications within their call centers. So as a result, they identified a gap in the tools and the functions, and they created a new group to optimize their call centers globally. So all of this happened within a crowdsourcing campaign, and you can see some of the elements of the best practices we were just discussing. So let's go to our third driver of employee engagement, and this one is leadership, trust, and transparency. So the way this is described is a perception of trust to rely on consistency between beliefs and actions of the leadership. Transparency to involve employees in decision-making and bi-directional interaction methods. And then thirdly, trusting company leaders to set the right course and to lead the company to future success. So our best practices in this area include a repeatable process. So by providing a repeatable, structured, proven process that's simple to understand, employees know what to expect and can participate regularly when a campaign is launched. Secondly, we want authentic feedback. So once these campaigns are launched, there's plenty of opportunities to provide feedback for ideas and help shape the ideas so that they can better meet the campaign goal or the underlying problem statement that's being asked. Third, it provides for an inclusive environment. All individuals have equal access to the campaigns and can contribute fully to the organization's success, and they're not limited by their existing role. In fact, no one needs to even know that you're an accountant or an administrative assistant. Everyone can participate equally. And then last but not least is follow through. It's so important to demonstrate the alignment at the end of the campaign that you will follow through with the selected idea and continue to move it forward and advance it. Let's look at an example of a campaign that demonstrates this driver. So this is what we call a Voice of the Employee campaign, and this was done at a global financial services company. And the local department head sponsored this challenge. And basically what happened is they had completed a Voice of the Employee survey, and they looked at the lowest scoring survey areas. They identified the bottom three, and they created those as categories in the campaign and invited the department, the employees in the department, to participate in a campaign to now start looking for solutions to the lowest scoring areas. So the survey itself just measures what the lowest scoring area is. This gives the department head as well as all the employees an opportunity to start driving action and following through on those lowest scoring areas. The impact was that it condensed the action planning timeframe from 3 months to 3 weeks. And that's simply because they went to an online format versus open discussions, which were very difficult to close down and come to a converged alignment, versus this crowdsourcing process allowed them to align fairly quickly. In fact, in 3 weeks versus 3 months. And then the average login of the employees was over 90%, showing that they appreciated the user-friendly format and the interactive options to collaborate with their peers. Okay, so let's look at our fourth driver of employee engagement, which is skill development and growth opportunities. So the way these are described is the employees want to be stretched and challenged in ways that result in personal and professional growth with opportunities to learn or develop new skills and stay current with market changes. It's also about recognition of skills and contributions. It's also associated with higher levels of autonomy to promote development and implementation of new ideas as employees feel empowered to pursue entrepreneurial goals that benefit the organization. Okay, so let's look at our best practices associated with this driver. Excellent. So the first one is talent management. By showing these crowdsourcing campaigns and observing the participation, we've seen clients identify new and interesting different roles and employees across their companies that can participate in other projects or potentially take these existing ideas or winning ideas forward. Recognition is also an important best practice. And it's important to offer a mix of both intrinsic and extrinsic rewards as motivators. Some of the behaviors that we see being recognized are creative thinking and how to formulate good ideas, to collaborate and help build out others' ideas. And then last but not least, participation in the idea implementation or research process and bringing ideas to life. We see many examples of HR teams augmenting their existing learning or training programs to offer these kinds of courses, whether online or in person, to help employees come up to speed and improve their participation in the crowdsourcing campaigns. Let's look at an example of a crowdsourcing campaign that supports this driver. So we've had various companies participate in this type of a campaign, and it's actually more of a back-end campaign. So once the idea has been selected, they create sort of an incubator space, also online, which allows either a single employee or multiple employees to collaborate to bring the idea to life. And this is the process of learnings and prototyping and debunking assumptions and getting further with the ideas. And so what happens is the companies will provide instructions, mentorship, and other resources so that these employees can advance the ideas. And the impact is that the employees feel empowered and they're learning new skills around how to prototype and test ideas, as well as they're capturing valuable learnings in an online environment that can be shared across the board. Okay, let's turn to our final employee engagement and driver, which is being connected to others. So the way we describe this one is it's a sense of belonging to the organization and the people around them. There's a deep sense not only of social camaraderie, but of kinship, shared culture, values, customers, and mission. And the ability to network across boundaries and understand how various roles, lines of business, regions all fit together and ladder back up to the corporate strategy. Okay, so our last series of best practices include a diverse knowledge base. So what we're finding with these crowdsourcing campaigns is that leaders are making better informed decisions because they have a diverse knowledge base and multiple perspectives that lead to better outcomes. Social engagement, this is the ability to keep gamification and social features front and center to keep your crowdsourcing campaigns interesting and help them evolve over time. Common values. This is an important opportunity to actually define what a culture of innovation even means for the company. What does a good idea mean for the company? What does implementation mean versus acting on selected ideas? It just gives you an opportunity to start digging deeper into the common values that will support and drive your culture of innovation. And then last but not least, the cross-silo collaboration and team formation ability. Time and time again, we've heard from clients that they've been able to avoid duplicating efforts or been able to merge multiple teams together, whether it's across departments or regions, to work on an idea or a project that may never have connected in the past. So let's look at our last example. And this is of a hackathon that was run by a regional health company. It was sponsored by the VP of Innovation, and they simply asked the question, how to improve the culture of innovation. And they did it in a hackathon methodology so that employees could form teams and work together on the topic. And it improved the employee engagement because they got together and were able to think and contribute to the future of innovation at the company. They received many more hackathon participants with this format than they had in the past. And they were able to improve the overall client experience. And at the end, although 7 ideas were selected for development, they're very excited about one in particular that is an industry game-changing project for the mobile roadmap. So in conclusion, I wanted to give one final example of a crowdsourcing campaign question that we saw come up recently that I think is a perfect example to summarize the engagement drivers as a final use case for your reference. The question was, how might we make work feel like a parental paradise for parents returning from maternity leave? So employee engagement was one of the company's strategic imperatives, and so they were able to signal that with this crowdsourcing question. They were able to make progress on meaningful work by removing this perceived obstacle as parents return from maternity leave. They were building trust and transparency by tapping into the employees themselves to help generate solutions to the problems that they themselves are experiencing. And it helped give them growth opportunities, again, by sort of removing the obstacle and making their work environment a better place. And they were all able to collaborate together and come to an aligned decision on what the best solution might be. So just another example to wrap up and tie the 5 drivers together. So now you have a compelling set of practices you can start leveraging today to steer your employee engagement ship in a better direction and start addressing these 2 hot buttons around top talent and disruptive technologies. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing your insights and these best practices. I'm sure the audience got a lot out of it. There have been a couple of questions that came in. Certainly throughout the course of your presentation, you were sharing how using ideation campaigns or giving employees a voice to share their ideas is a mechanism for engaging employees. How do you handle employee ideas that either aren't relevant or come from a disgruntled place?
Oh, very interesting question. So one of the points that I mentioned was authentic feedback through moderation. So what we'll do is we'll coach our clients on some prepared comments to, first of all, remain fact-based, but also try to understand how this links to the problem statement. Because typically, if an idea is coming through that's either disgruntled or might not even be relevant, it's usually fair to ask, simply state, how is this related to the question that we're asking? And depending on how negative the sentiment is, you can actually just delete the idea out of the session. But we don't generally see that very often. Most employees are pretty professional because of the public nature of the campaigns, and they generally use it as an opportunity to participate and try to increase their engagement.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Another question that came in one of the earlier best practices in the presentation that you shared related to defining success measures. Can you provide more detail on how to define success measures, both from a business value perspective as well as from an employee engagement perspective?
Sure. So one of the reasons we mention this as a best practice is because I think the instinct is to always provide a business value success measure. So what cost savings will there be? What revenue will be generated? Potentially even going so far as ROI or looking for ROI measures. And so the point that I was trying to make is that through these crowdsourcing campaigns, you can, in fact, impact those kinds of business value measures, but you can also move the dial on employee engagement. And some of the success measures we have there could be number of participants. And you can also measure the difference between someone who logged in and someone who participated. You can also look at regional participation. So if you are collecting information about your users, you could see, for example, if the West Coast participated more than the East Coast, or if a certain department head and their group participated more than a different department. And you can start to understand maybe how you could either improve your communication plan, drive more champions in different areas that aren't participating. But I think the point is you can move the dial on both together, engagement as well as business value.
Excellent, excellent. So before I ask the next question that came in, just a reminder, if you have a question, you can enter it into the chat box and we will continue to answer questions. Another question came in is, can you give some examples of how companies have informed or influenced talent management?
Sure, yes. We've had several examples of employees that were identified through these crowdsourcing campaigns, for example, that were either promoted to new positions because of a skill set that they could see or were able to demonstrate by participating in a campaign, or they were just highlighted, for example, to be included in succession planning discussions. So we've heard on multiple occasions that these crowdsourcing campaigns open the door to seeing employees in a new light. It also allows you to see potential hobbies and previous work experience skills that either you didn't know existed or are buried somewhere on a resume that got tucked away after they got hired. So we've seen that on multiple occasions, and the different success stories that our clients will tout based on these crowdsourcing campaigns.
Very good. Thank you so much. While we wait and see if any additional questions come in the chat, can we go to the next slide? Great. What I wanted to do is make sure that everyone in the audience was aware that the third webinar in our series is upcoming in September the 27th, and we will be featuring Dan Beeler from Forrester, and he will be sharing guidance around overcoming innovation gaps and driving employee engagement. So continuing to explore that intersection between employee engagement and innovation, specifically looking at innovation maturity and the role of employee engagement. It doesn't look like we've had any additional questions that have come in, so I would like to thank you all very much for your time this afternoon and your attention, and we look forward to connecting with you in the field. And if you do have follow-on questions, please do reach out to Spigit. Thank you so much and have a great day.